It is the next round presented by Bud Light, who reminds you decide to ride before you ever take that first drink. Make sure you have a plan for the night. Decide to ride with our friends at Bud Light. John Samuel Shenker is with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline. What is up, my friend? How are you today? You are muted, John Samuel Shenker. You're muted.
Is that on our
There
end?
you go. No, you're all good, boss.
go.
How are you, man?
I'm doing good. How are you guys?
Doing awesome. Thanks a lot. Listen, I mean, obviously it was a difficult loss to digest. As you've been able to step back, what can you take away from a tough loss like that Saturday?
Just very, very unclean game on both sides. I can really only speak for the offense, but looking back, I think we played the same game for the first three games. We played the same kind of ball. The competition just got better. And we didn't improve. And I think that was a big cause for the loss. Obviously, it's only one. You don't want to beat you twice. So, big week this week to clean up those things and play clean football.
We talked about this earlier, John Samuel. The Owen Papo hit on Sean Clifford early in the game. It's the best hit I've seen college football or the NFL this year, by far. I just thought that was like that defining moment that was going to get you guys rolling in the right direction. And I don't know what your thoughts were on that, but it just seemed like the crowd, everybody was going nuts. And right after that, you get the fourth down stop, and it seemed like the momentum was going y'all's way.
Yeah, it was early on. You know, the big thing in the first half was touchdowns in the red zone. They had 2 touchdowns. We had 2 field goals, 14-6 at half. In the second half, we came out. It was just, it was a steamroll. It was just not up to our standard at all. It kind of, in my opinion, we just came out super flat for some reason. I don't know why. It was only a 1 touchdown game, but it was. I thought we had momentum early. The crowd was really into it. It was a cool environment for sure, but we just didn't play clean enough football.
What can go into settling? I hate saying settling for field goals. What can go into red zones turning into field goals and not touchdowns? That's settling, but I'm going to rephrase it differently. What turns into what causes sometimes where you have to take the field goal and not the touchdown?
Once you get in the red zone, things kind of tighten up, so windows close for quarterbacks and things like that. But you have to be able to execute in the red zone. You got the defense on their heels most of the time when you're in that situation. But we were pretty successful the first few games in the red zone. I think we were like 8 for 8, and then this past weekend we were like 0 for 4 or something. So when you get in the red zone, you have to score touchdowns, especially against good teams.
Listen, the quarterback gets blamed a lot more sometimes than they deserve, and they get more credit sometimes than they deserve. Did you feel like there was a moment in the game that you would see Calzada come into the game? Is he close to maybe being in the rotation?
I didn't think they would put him in this past week, no. Just with how last week's practice with the reps and things like that. I don't know what's going to move forward. That's Coach Harsin's decision. But whoever he puts out there, I know that's who he trusts to lead this offense. So we'll see once we start practice.
John Samuel Shenker is with us, the Auburn tight end, on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline. This is the next round, presented by Bud Light, who reminds you decide to ride before you ever take that first drink. Make sure you have a solid plan. Decide to ride with our friends at Bud Light. How do you, and look, I'm not saying Ashford's going to be the guy moving forward, but he played the second half, and you've had more time on the field with TJ Finley. How do you get more reps and more comfortable as one of the primary receivers with Robbie Ashford? Are you able to do that maybe even more on the side this time of year?
I wouldn't say more on the side, but we'll get reps with all the guys throughout practice. It doesn't really matter because we'll have individual periods with quarterbacks and things like that. So throughout practice, I get reps with most of the quarterbacks. So it's never really a shock on who's at quarterback for us because it rotates a good bit. So we'll see once we start practice tomorrow what happens. But that's really up to the coaching staff.
Yeah, and I guess I asked that question poorly, obviously. So let me kind of rephrase it, because an important thing is a quarterback and a receiver being on the same page. you don't know that till you're in a game, and you've just had less time in a game with Ashford. So I don't know how that process works, and I guess that was kind of the point of my question. Not necessarily that wasn't a hidden question to try to get you to tip who's going to start. I wasn't trying to do that.
No, I understand. That makes sense. Yeah, it can be difficult because your timing may not be down and stuff like that. I just felt like the whole game we were discombobulating. Obviously, Robbie was as well with pressure or just he wasn't comfortable. But yeah, we try our best to get as many reps as possible throughout the week, just so we're comfortable. Because he also hasn't had. I don't think he's had a start in college yet. I mean, he's had playing time, but I don't think he started yet. So it's just trying to help that guy. If he's the guy, then it will be necessary to get more reps with him this week.
There's been speculation about Brian Harsin's job for months now, going back to the end of last season. Obviously, coming off a loss, a 41-12 loss, there's going to be more speculation and more heat on your head coach. How big of a distraction is that for you guys, the team? I mean, do you guys talk about that? Do you just kind of, put that aside and just try to avoid listening to any of that noise?
Yeah, you can't listen to it. It's so early in the year. I mean, we were 2-1 last year as well, and like you said, we got to 6-2, and 13th in the country, and then things fell apart. So it's really early in the season. Obviously, it was a really tough loss at home, and you can't afford to have another one of those. But yeah, you can't look at that noise, especially right now. So early in the season, we start SEC ball this week against Mizzou, so just trying to flush it and get ready for Mizzou and SEC to start 1-0 in SEC play.
Take me inside just the attitude of this team after the game and meetings and now throughout the week of practice. Will you guys – you have some guys in that coaching staff that played at Auburn that love Auburn so much. Not that Brian Harsin and the coaches from the outside don't, but there's something about it being your school. Will a guy like Zach or Carnell or somebody like that step up this week to sort of rejuice you guys? Have you seen that from those coaches in the past?
Well, we've talked to those guys in the past. We have, and just their thoughts on it. Because I think we have 4 or 5 guys that played here at Auburn. They're on staff, whether coaches or just support staff. So, yeah, we definitely conversate with those guys because they were here when we were national champs and things like that. So they understand how it's supposed to look. So we do talk to them a good bit. And obviously it comes down to the players leading, but yes, we do conversate with those guys and just hear what they have to say because they've seen a lot of football, especially here at Auburn.
I know we haven't had a ton of time together, so you don't know us very well, but you're married. Lance's girlfriend wants him to go to a wedding this weekend. It is a college football weekend. As a married man, somebody in a committed relationship, what would be your thoughts on a football season wedding and someone asking you to go?
I highly frown upon weddings in the fall. I don't. My wife actually last year, she went to a wedding at Penn State last year, so she didn't get to go to Penn State game. Yeah. But no, I'm not a huge fan of fall weddings. Yeah.
Well, they're selfish. They're selfish.
Yeah,
I mean, I agree, and I'm going to be a hypocrite if I end up going. I'm not going to go, for the record. But I think you've got 8 other months you can place your wedding in. Stay away from football season.
But you're on the team, John Samuel. You've got a good excuse. You got to come up with a good excuse this guy can give, though, because he's not on the team.
It's football season. That's all should be said.
You couldn't go with your wife because, honey, I'm in the game. Yeah. They need me to play at Penn State. What's his excuse?
I mean, maybe just say that you're going to watch the game regardless if you're there or if you're watching it at home. So, I mean, most guys do that anyways. They go to weddings. They have a phone in their lap watching the game while they're at the wedding. So, yeah, I'm not a huge fan of that, honestly.
Me either. I think it's a great advice from John Samuel Shenker.
I think we all agree.
That's an SEC football player telling you this. Hey, listen, have a great week. We appreciate the time as always, and we'll catch up with you next Monday after Mizzou.
Yes, sir. Thank you, guys.
All right, take care. That is John Samuel Shenker on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline. Next round presented by Bud Light, who reminds you, decide to ride. Before you ever take that first drink, make sure you have a solid plan. Decide to ride. Our friends at Bud Light and Anheuser-Busch remind you, always decide to ride.